Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The day had started like any other, but for Ray, it quickly spiraled into a nightmare. One mishap after another piled up, each seemingly worse than the last. His coffee maker sputtered and died, leaving him caffeine-deprived. Traffic crawled at a snail's pace, making him late for an important meeting. His boss berated him in front of the entire office, and to top it all off, he received an unexpected bill that drained his already meager savings. By the time Ray left work, his nerves were frayed to the breaking point. He climbed into his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. With a roar of the engine, he peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing against the asphalt. Ray drove aimlessly, his vision blurred by angry tears. The familiar streets of his neighborhood gave way to unfamiliar territory. Before he knew it, he found himself in a part of town he'd never seen before. The buildings looked older, their facades weathered and worn. Streetlights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across cracked sidewalks. A loud pop startled Ray from his thoughts. The car lurched to the right, and he fought to maintain control. Cursing under his breath, he guided the vehicle to the curb. A flat tire. Perfect. Just perfect. Ray slammed his palm against the steering wheel in frustration. He reached for his phone, only to find the screen blank. No signal, of course. With a heavy sigh, he stepped out of the car. The air felt thick and oppressive, pressing down on him like a physical weight. Ray glanced up and down the deserted street, hoping to spot a passerby or an open business. Nothing. Just rows of darkened windows staring back at him like soulless eyes. Left with no other choice, Ray began to walk. His footsteps echoed loudly in the silence, each one seeming to mock his predicament. He walked for what felt like hours, though his watch insisted it had only been minutes. Just as despair began to set in, Ray spotted a figure up ahead. An old man stood beneath a flickering streetlight, his weathered face partially hidden by the brim of a battered fedora. Relief washed over Ray as he quickened his pace. "Excuse me," Ray called out, his voice sounding strangely muffled in the still air. "Can you help me? My car broke down, and I can't get a signal on my phone." The old man turned slowly, fixing Ray with a piercing gaze. His eyes seemed to glow in the dim light, and Ray felt a shiver run down his spine. "Help, you say?" The old man's voice was a raspy whisper. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it is you who can help yourself." Ray blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry?" The old man gestured to a building behind him. It was a nondescript structure, its brick facade faded and crumbling. "In there, you'll find what you seek." Before Ray could ask for clarification, the old man vanished. One moment he was there, and the next, gone. Ray rubbed his eyes, convinced he was hallucinating from stress and exhaustion. With no other options presenting themselves, Ray approached the building. The door creaked open at his touch, revealing a long corridor bathed in soft, golden light. Doors lined both sides, each one identical save for the numbers etched into their surfaces. Ray's footsteps echoed as he made his way down the corridor. He paused at the first door, his hand hovering over the knob. Something about this place felt off. But what choice did he have? Taking a deep breath, Ray turned the knob and stepped through. The world tilted and spun, and Ray felt as if he were falling through space. When the sensation passed, he found himself standing in a bustling city street. The sun shone brightly overhead, and the air was filled with the sounds of traffic and conversations. Ray looked down at himself and gasped. His body was different, taller, more muscular. He caught his reflection in a store window and saw a stranger staring back at him. He was now a man in his mid-30s with close-cropped dark hair and piercing blue eyes. People rushed past him, some nodding in recognition. A woman in a crisp business suit approached, a warm smile on her face. "There you are, honey. Ready for lunch?" Ray opened his mouth to protest, to explain that there had been some mistake, but the words that came out weren't his own. "Of course, darling. Lead the way." As he followed the woman to a nearby restaurant, Ray's mind raced. What was happening? How had he become someone else? And more importantly, how could he get back? The next few hours passed in a blur as Ray experienced life as this stranger. He attended meetings, made decisions that affected hundreds of employees, and navigated complex personal relationships. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. As the day wore on, Ray began to feel a nagging sensation in the back of his mind. A voice whispered that this wasn't real, that he didn't belong here. He concentrated on that feeling, willing himself to return to the corridor. In an instant, the world around him dissolved, and Ray found himself standing once again before the door he had entered. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to process what had just happened. The old man's voice echoed in the corridor. "Interesting choice for a first door, wouldn't you say?" Ray spun around, but the old man was nowhere to be seen. "What is this place? What's happening to me?" "This is a place of possibilities," the disembodied voice replied. "A chance to experience lives not your own, to learn, to grow, to choose." "Choose?" Ray's voice trembled. "Choose what?" "A new life, if you wish it. You have a unique opportunity, Ray. The chance to start over, to become someone else entirely, but choose wisely, for your old life will not simply disappear. It will be offered to another, just as these lives are offered to you." Ray's mind reeled at the implications. How many chances do I get? 8 doors, 8 lives. You may explore each for 24 hours before you must move on. But be warned, time is of the essence. You cannot linger here indefinitely. With that, the voice fell silent, leaving Ray alone with his thoughts and the endless line of doors stretching before him. Taking a deep breath, Ray approached the second door. This time, he was prepared for the disorienting sensation as he stepped through. He emerged as a woman in her late 20s, with long auburn hair and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence. He was standing in front of a classroom full of eager young faces. "Now, who can tell me about the water cycle?" Ray heard himself ask, his voice higher and softer than he was used to. A sea of hands shot up, and Ray found himself effortlessly guiding the class through a lesson on earth science. The joy of teaching, of shaping young minds, filled him with a warmth he had never experienced before. As the school day ended, Ray walked to a modest apartment, greeting neighbors along the way. Inside, he found a space filled with books, plants, and colorful artwork. It felt like home in a way his old apartment never had. Ray spent the evening grading papers and preparing lessons, occasionally pausing to water the plants or scratch behind the ears of a purring cat. There was a simplicity to this life, a sense of purpose that resonated deeply within him. But as midnight approached, Ray felt the pull of the corridor once more. With a mix of reluctance and curiosity, he allowed himself to be drawn back. The third door led to a life of adventure. Ray found himself as a rugged explorer, trekking through dense jungles and scaling towering mountains. The thrill of discovery pulsed through his veins as he uncovered ancient artifacts and marveled at natural wonders few had ever seen. The fourth door opened onto a life of creativity. As a renowned painter, Ray's hands moved with sure strokes across canvases, bringing vibrant worlds to life. Galleries clamored for his work, and art critics hailed him as a visionary. With each life, Ray learned more about himself, his strengths, his weaknesses, his deepest desires. He experienced love and loss, triumph and failure. Each door offered a glimpse of a road not taken, a person he could have been. The fifth door led to a life of wealth and power. As the CEO of a major corporation, Ray wielded influence that shaped the world. But he also felt the weight of responsibility and the loneliness that came with such a position. Behind the sixth door, Ray found himself as a small-town doctor, beloved by the community he served. The satisfaction of healing the sick and comforting the dying gave his life profound meaning. The seventh door opened onto a life of fame. As a celebrated actor, Ray basked in the adoration of millions. but he also grappled with the loss of privacy and the constant pressure to maintain his image. As Ray approached the 8th and final door, he paused. He had experienced so much, learned so much about himself and the myriad possibilities life held. But which life should he choose? Which version of himself felt most true? With a trembling hand, Ray opened the last door. He stepped into the body of a woman in her early 30s. She had wavy black hair that fell just past her shoulders and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her name was Violette, and she was a writer. Ray, now Violette, sat at a desk in a cozy home office, fingers flying across a keyboard. Words flowed effortlessly, weaving tales of adventure and romance, of heartbreak and redemption. Outside the window, a garden bloomed with a riot of colorful flowers. As the day progressed, Violette interacted with friends and family. She had a close-knit group of supportive loved ones, each relationship rich with history and shared experiences. There was laughter over lunch with a best friend, a heartfelt phone call with a sibling, and a tender moment with a partner who looked at her with unwavering love. Violette volunteered at a local animal shelter, finding joy in caring for creatures in need. She attended a book club meeting where passionate discussions about literature left her intellectually stimulated. In the evening, she practiced yoga, finding peace in the union of mind and body. Throughout it all, Ray felt a sense of rightness, of coming home. This life as Violette encompassed elements of all the others he had experienced: creativity, purpose, adventure, love, and impact. It wasn't perfect, but it felt authentic and full of potential. As the 24 hours neared their end, Ray made his decision. This would be his new life. He would become Violette, embracing her joys and challenges, her past and her future. The familiar pull of the corridor tugged at him, but this time Ray resisted. He focused on Violette, on the life he was choosing. The sensation faded, and with it, the last vestiges of Ray's old identity slipped away. Violette blinked, a moment of disorientation passing quickly. She smiled, stretching her arms above her head as she saved her day's writing. The cursor blinked on the screen, promising new stories to come. As she stood to make a cup of tea, Violette paused at the window. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. She took a deep breath, feeling grateful for this life, for this moment. Somewhere in another reality, someone else was stepping into Ray's old life. But here now, Violette was exactly where she was meant to be. With a contented sigh, she turned away from the window, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited her in this new chapter of her life. The days that followed were a whirlwind of discovery for Violette. She delved into her writing with renewed passion, drawing inspiration from the myriad lives she had glimpsed. Her stories took on new depth and complexity, resonating with readers in ways she had never imagined possible. Violette's relationship with her partner Thomas deepened as she brought a fresh perspective to their interactions. She appreciated his kindness and support with new eyes, recognizing the rare and precious bond they shared. Together, they embarked on spontaneous weekend trips, exploring hidden corners of their city and rediscovering the joy of shared adventures. At the animal shelter, Violette found herself drawn to a 3-legged dog that others had overlooked. She named him Tripod and decided to foster him, much to Thomas's amused resignation. Tripod's resilience and zest for life, despite his disability, became a daily source of inspiration for Violette's writing and her outlook on life. As weeks turned into months, Violette's new novel began to take shape. It was a story of transformation, of lives intersecting in unexpected ways, of the choices that define us and the courage it takes to embrace change. She poured her experiences into the pages, weaving a tale that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. One sunny afternoon, as Violette sat in her favorite cafe working on her manuscript, a familiar figure caught her eye. An old man in a battered fedora sat at a nearby table, his piercing gaze fixed upon her. For a moment, a flicker of recognition passed through Violette. a ghost of a memory from another life. The old man smiled enigmatically and raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. Violette blinked, and he was gone, leaving her to wonder if he had been there at all. Shaking off the strange encounter, Violette returned to her writing with renewed focus. She had chosen this life, this identity, and she was determined to make the most of every moment. As her novel neared completion, Violette received news that her previous book had been nominated for a prestigious literary award. The ceremony was to be held in New York, and as she and Thomas packed for the trip, excitement tingled through her veins. The night of the award ceremony arrived, and Violette found herself seated in a grand ballroom surrounded by literary giants she had long admired. When her name was called as the winner, she ascended the stage in a daze, her emerald green gown shimmering under the spotlights. As she accepted the award, Violette's gaze swept across the sea of faces before her. For a split second, she thought she saw a familiar face. Her own face, or rather Ray's face, looking back at her from the crowd. But then she blinked, and it was gone. Violette took a deep breath and began her acceptance speech. "Life is a series of doors," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Behind each one lies a different path, a different version of ourselves. The challenge is not in choosing the perfect door, but in having the courage to step through and embrace the journey that follows." As applause filled the room, Violette felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. She had made the right choice. This life, with all its joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges, was exactly where she was meant to be. In the years that followed, Violette's career soared to new heights. Her novels became international bestsellers, touching the lives of millions. She used her platform to advocate for causes close to her heart: animal welfare, mental health awareness, and literacy programs for underprivileged communities. Thomas remained her steadfast partner through it all, his love and support unwavering. They married in a small, intimate ceremony in the garden where they had shared their first kiss. Tripod, now a beloved family member, served as the ring bearer, eliciting chuckles from guests as he hobbled down the aisle. As Violette's 40th birthday approached, she and Thomas decided to start a family. The journey to parenthood was not without its challenges, but when they finally held their twin daughters in their arms, Violette felt a love so profound it took her breath away. Balancing motherhood with her writing career presented new challenges, but Violette approached them with the same determination and creativity she brought to her novels. She wrote in stolen moments, during nap time, in the early hours of the morning, or late at night when the house was quiet. Her experiences as a mother infused her writing with new depth and emotion. One day, as Violette sat in the park watching her daughters play, an elderly woman sat down beside her. There was something familiar about her, a spark in her eyes that tugged at Violette's memory. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of years and wisdom. Violette nodded, smiling. "It certainly is." "You know," the woman continued, her gaze fixed on the children playing, "life has a funny way of working out. Sometimes the path we think we're meant to follow turns out to be just a stepping stone to where we're truly meant to be." A shiver ran down Violette's spine. There was something in the woman's words, in the knowing look she gave Violette, that hinted at a deeper understanding. Before Violette could respond, her daughters came running over, demanding to be pushed on the swings. When she turned back, the old woman was gone, leaving behind only the lingering sense of a connection across time and possibility. As Violette pushed her giggling daughters on the swings, she reflected on the strange twists and turns that had brought her to this moment. From Ray's desperate drive into an unknown neighborhood to the corridor of doors and the lives she had glimpsed, every step had led her here. She thought of the life she had left behind, wondering briefly about the person who had stepped into Ray's shoes. Had they found happiness? Had they made different choices? In the end, she realized it didn't matter. Each life was its own journey, filled with its own joys and sorrows, triumphs and failures. Violette had chosen this life, and she embraced it fully, grateful for every moment, the sleepless nights with colicky babies, the exhilaration of a well-crafted sentence, the quiet evenings curled up with Thomas and a good book. This was her story now, and she was writing it with every breath, every choice, every act of love. As the years passed, Violette's hair began to silver, and lines of laughter etched themselves around her eyes. Her daughters grew into strong, independent women, each forging their own paths in the world. Thomas remained her rock, their love deepening with each passing year. Violette's final novel, published on her 70th birthday, was hailed as her masterpiece. It was a sweeping epic that spanned multiple lives and realities, a testament to the power of choice and the enduring nature of the human spirit. Critics praised its depth and insight, unaware of the very real experiences that had inspired it. On an evening, as Violette sat on her porch watching the sunset, she felt a familiar presence beside her. She turned to see the old man in the fedora, looking exactly as he had all those years ago in that strange, empty street. "You've done well," he said, his voice carrying the echo of that long-ago night. Violette smiled, a lifetime of memories dancing in her eyes. "I chose well," she replied. The old man nodded, a knowing twinkle in his eye. "And now?" he asked. Violette looked out at the golden sky, at the life she had built, the love she had known, the stories she had told. She thought of Ray, of the desperate man she had once been, and felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. "Now," she said softly, "I'm ready for the next adventure." The old man offered his hand, and Violette took it without hesitation. Together, they walked towards a door that hadn't been there a moment before. It stood alone on the porch, its surface shimmering with possibilities. As Violette reached for the handle, she felt no fear, only curiosity and excitement for what lay ahead. She had lived a full life, had known love and loss, joy and sorrow. She had told her stories and left her mark on the world. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.